Welcome to your deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at teamwork.
Ooh, teamwork.
Yeah, you sent over that English Daily Podcast episode
Right.
all about collaborating,
Yeah.
especially when you're working with English speakers.
I think this will be really helpful for you, actually.
Well, I have a big project coming up, so I think this is going to be super relevant.
Yeah, and it seems like you want to go kind of beyond just the basics.
Definitely.
This podcast has like vocab and communication tips.
Oh, yeah.
And even like they did a little brainstorming session.
I'm excited to get to that.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack.
Well, the hosts start off by really highlighting how powerful teamwork can be.
Yeah.
Like the whole two heads are better than one idea.
Yeah.
But they're also realistic.
Uh-huh.
They know that it can be really frustrating when it goes wrong.
Yeah. And they emphasize that like any team,
Yeah.
it's not just about individual talent.
Uh-huh.
It's like how well everyone works together.
Right.
Like, do you use everyone's strengths?
Right? Like
Yeah.
a basketball team, you need every position.
Exactly.
Right. And so they go into some specific vocabulary
Yeah.
like collaboration, delegation, consensus, accountability, and brainstorming.
Right.
Now, I know that you probably already know these words.
Yeah.
But what I thought was really interesting was they go beyond just the dictionary definition
Yeah.
and give like real world examples
Exactly.
of how these concepts actually like work in a team.
Yeah. And what I thought was really cool is how they tie those words to like a deeper understanding of how teams work.
Okay.
Like they talk about accountability,
Right.
not as like blaming someone,
Yeah.
but it's more like you're taking ownership
Okay.
and you're proud of like what you've done.
Right.
And you see how your work is impacting the team.
Oh, that's a good point.
Yeah.
So easy to get caught up in just your own tasks and your deadlines.
Yeah.
And forget about the bigger picture.
Absolutely. And they talk about how important communication is. Making sure everyone's on the same page.
Yes.
That everyone understands what they're supposed to do.
Right.
And they even give you phrases that you can use.
Oh, cool.
So you can navigate those like sometimes awkward conversations.
Right.
Like when you're giving someone a task,
Uh-huh.
they suggest saying something like, given your expertise in whatever, I think you'd be the best person to handle this.
Right. So it's really clear.
It's very clear.
And there's no question about who's doing what.
Exactly.
And I really like how they talked about making the environment really positive.
Yeah.
Like they talk about open communication,
Yeah.
acknowledging people's contributions,
Mm-hmm.
and really focusing on solutions.
Yeah.
And I really like that because I've been in situations where it's just so negative,
Right.
where people are just blaming each other,
Totally.
and it just like derails the whole project.
And what's interesting is they connect those tips to like building a foundation of trust
Okay.
so that you know your team respects each other.
Right.
Because when you feel safe, you share more ideas,
Uh-huh.
you're going to be more engaged.
Yeah.
And you're going to want to like contribute more.
I like that.
Yeah, and they have some really cool tips for making that environment,
Okay.
like to stay focused on solutions.
Uh-huh.
They say use what's called the 5 whys method.
Oh, the 5 whys.
Yeah, so when a problem comes up,
Okay.
instead of like pointing fingers at people,
Right.
you ask why 5 times to get to like the root of the problem.
Oh, so you're figuring out why the problem actually happened.
Yeah, so then you can prevent it.
Oh, that's really cool. I've never heard of that before.
It's a good one.
I have to try that.
And when it comes to like acknowledging people,
Uh-huh.
they say be specific and genuine.
Oh, okay.
So don't just say like, good job.
Right.
Say something like, I really appreciated how you did this
Yeah.
during the meeting because it helped us move forward.
Oh, that's a good example.
Right.
Yeah, you're actually acknowledging what they did,
Exactly.
not just like a general good job.
Yeah, you're recognizing their effort.
Yeah, and I know I can definitely do a better job of that.
Mm-hmm.
Like really acknowledging my team.
And speaking of acknowledging people, they talk about active listening.
Oh, yeah, active listening.
Which is not just hearing what they're saying,
Yeah.
but you're really trying to understand their perspective.
Right.
And they give you some phrases to use.
Oh, cool.
So you can show that you're actively listening.
Okay.
Like, so if I understand correctly, you're saying, or
Yeah.
can you elaborate on that point?
Yeah.
These are great ways to make sure that you're both understanding each other.
Right, and that you're like actually paying attention.
Exactly.
Right.
And I think what's interesting is they connect active listening to building that rapport and trust.
Uh-huh.
Because when people feel heard and understood,
Yeah.
it creates a more collaborative environment.
It's funny. I always thought I was a good listener,
Right.
but now I'm thinking maybe I'm not so good.
Well, this podcast made me realize that there's always room for improvement.
They point out some of the pitfalls.
Yeah.
Like interrupting people.
Yeah.
Or like jumping to a conclusion.
Right. Before they've even finished.
I know I've definitely done that.
It's easy to do.
Yeah.
Especially when you're busy or you're like stressed out.
Right.
But this podcast says that active listening, it's a skill you can improve with practice and intention.
So you have to like really focus on what people are saying.
Yeah. And then respond in a way that shows you get it.
I like that.
And then they talk about flexibility.
Yeah.
Being open to other people's ideas.
Right. Being willing to adapt.
Yeah, especially when things don't go according to plan.
And this is where having like a shared language can really help.
Oh, yeah.
Like making sure everyone understands like the nuances of what other people are saying.
And they give some good phrases
Okay.
to help with those conversations.
Oh, like what?
Like instead of saying, that's a bad idea, you could say, I see where you're coming from, but have you considered...
So you're not just shutting them down.
Right. You're giving constructive criticism and finding ways to like work together.
Yeah, like building on each other's ideas.
Exactly. And that brings us to clarifying expectations.
Oh, yeah, that's important.
It's often overlooked.
Yeah.
But it's really important to prevent those misunderstandings.
Right.
So everyone's working toward the same goal.
Right. And how do they suggest doing that?
They suggest at the beginning of like every meeting or before you start a project, you clearly outline what you're trying to achieve, everyone's roles, and who's responsible for what. And they even recommend using visuals.
Oh, wow.
Like a flow chart.
Oh, interesting.
Or like a timeline so people can see it.
Oh, that makes it so much clearer.
Yeah. Especially if it's a really complicated project.
Right.
With lots of moving pieces.
I'm starting to see like a pattern.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
It seems like so many problems with teamwork. It just comes down to communication.
Yeah.
Like not being clear about what you expect.
Right.
Not being good at delegating. Or just not really listening to each other.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like all these issues could be solved if we just communicated better.
Absolutely. And that's why they focus so much on the language and the vocabulary of teamwork. Because you have to have that shared understanding of all the key terms and concepts to communicate well.
Especially if you're working with English speakers.
Yeah. Where there could be language barriers.
So it's even more important then.
Exactly.
I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah.
But first, I'm really intrigued by that brainstorming role play they did.
Oh, yeah, me too.
I feel like we could learn a lot from that.
I think it'll be cool to see how they actually put this all into practice.
Yeah. Okay, so let's take a quick break.
Okay.
And then we'll get into that role play.
Awesome.
When we come back for part 2.
Sounds good. Okay, so let's get into this role play. It's like we're right there in the room with them.
Yeah, and I'm really interested to see how they deal with all the cultural differences you were talking about.
Right, because even though these principles work for everyone, you know, different cultures do brainstorming differently.
Right.
So it'll be cool to see how they handle that.
So the scenario is they're a marketing team.
Right.
And they have to come up with ideas for a new campaign.
Okay.
And Alex is the team leader.
Okay.
And right away, he's so positive and inclusive. He welcomes everyone.
Right.
Make sure everyone understands what they're trying to do.
Yeah, and what I think is interesting is he takes a minute to really acknowledge everyone's hard work.
Oh, yeah.
And tell them he's confident they're going to come up with great ideas.
Oh, that's a good point.
It's like a subtle way to build that rapport.
Yeah, like we're all in this together.
Exactly. And then he just opens it up for suggestions with open-ended questions. Like, what are your initial thoughts? Does anyone have an idea they want to share?
So he's not leading the conversation.
He's more like facilitating it.
Yeah, making sure everyone has a chance to talk.
And he uses words like we and our.
Oh, yeah.
To really show it's a group effort.
Yeah, everyone's input is important.
Exactly.
And then Sophia chimes in with this idea about social media ads.
Oh, yeah, to reach younger people.
Yeah, she wants to use Instagram and TikTok. But what I thought was really interesting was she doesn't just say, we should do social media.
Right.
She explains why she thinks it would work.
And she even has ideas about what kind of content to use.
Right. She's really thought it through.
And Alex doesn't just say, good idea.
Yeah.
He really acknowledges her.
Like, what does he say?
He says something like, that's a great suggestion, Sophia. I especially like your idea about using TikTok.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. And then he asks everyone else what they think.
So he's bringing everyone into the conversation.
Yeah. And showing that he values her idea.
Right. He's not just like, okay, next.
Yeah, she's really building on it.
And then David suggests partnering with influencers.
Oh, yeah, to get the word out.
Yeah.
And Alex does the same thing. Acknowledges him and asks what everyone else thinks.
It's interesting that Alex isn't pushing his own ideas.
Yeah, he's comfortable letting the team talk.
Yeah, giving them time to think.
And he's so positive the whole time, encouraging everyone.
He says things like, that's an interesting perspective.
Right.
And I appreciate you sharing your thoughts.
And he does that even when the ideas are a little out there.
Yeah, he doesn't shut anyone down.
I think he's showing everyone how he wants them to behave.
Yeah, like it's okay to share your ideas even if they're different.
And when people feel safe, they'll share more.
I'm starting to realize that brainstorming isn't just about the ideas.
Yeah.
It's about making people feel comfortable.
Right, so they can take risks and not worry about being judged.
This role play is really making me think.
Yeah, and the podcast hosts do a good job.
Yeah.
Highlighting the key takeaways.
Oh, like what?
They talk about clear communication, active listening, and encouraging participation.
Right.
But they also point out some things that are more subtle.
Like
how you communicate without even talking.
Oh, body language?
Yeah, like Alex is really engaged. He makes eye contact. Nods his head.
Yeah.
Even leans in.
So he's showing he's interested.
And that's just as important as what he's saying.
Right, it all works together.
And they talk about how important it is to be aware of other cultures.
Oh, right, because in some cultures it's rude to interrupt.
Yeah, or to disagree with someone directly.
Right.
So you have to be sensitive to that.
Yeah, even if everyone's speaking English.
There can still be those differences.
And being aware of those differences can help you make everyone feel included.
I'm really impressed with how much thought they put into this.
Me too.
They took these really complex ideas and made them into something you can actually use.
Right. Practical advice.
And I think this role play has been really helpful for seeing how to run a good brainstorming session.
Especially when you're working with English speakers.
Exactly.
I'm already thinking about how I can use this at my next meeting.
That's great.
But before we finish talking about this, I want to go back to working in English-speaking environments.
Yeah. They said that it's really important to be good at collaborating.
Right.
Especially when English is the main language.
And they said it's even harder if English isn't your first language.
Because then you have those cultural differences.
Right.
Plus the language barrier.
I can imagine how intimidating that would be.
Yeah.
To be in a meeting.
Yeah.
And not be totally confident in your English.
And that's why they say clear communication is so important.
Yeah.
They say if English isn't your first language, try to use simple language. And don't use idioms or slang.
Right, because that can be confusing.
And they emphasize active listening. Really pay attention to what people are saying.
Right.
And ask questions if you don't understand.
And they even give you some phrases you can use.
Yeah, like, could you please repeat that?
Oh, okay.
Or, I'm not sure I understand. Could you explain it a different way?
That's really helpful.
Yeah, it's all about making sure everyone feels comfortable.
Right, comfortable asking questions.
And comfortable sharing their ideas.
Yeah.
And they talk about building relationships.
Oh, yeah.
They say, if English isn't your first language, take the time to get to know your coworkers.
Okay.
Learn about where they're from and what they like to do.
Oh, that's a good idea.
It helps to break down those barriers.
Right, and you make those personal connections.
And they encourage you to learn from your colleagues.
Oh, like how?
Like ask them for feedback on your English.
Okay.
Be open to suggestions.
So it's all about being willing to learn.
And to grow.
I think they gave some really good advice.
Yeah, it was sensitive and insightful.
And it's not just for people who don't speak English as their first language.
It's for anyone who wants to work better in a diverse team.
We've covered so much in this episode.
I know, it's a lot.
We talked about the vocabulary of teamwork, how to make a positive team environment.
We analyzed that role play.
Yeah.
And all the challenges of working with English speakers.
I feel so much more prepared now.
That's awesome.
For my next team project.
Well, good.
I think we should move on to part 3 now.
Okay, sounds good.
And wrap up our discussion.
Yeah.
Wow, we've really gone deep on teamwork in this episode.
We have. It's amazing how much the podcast covered.
From the vocab to communication styles, that role play was really insightful.
Oh, totally.
I feel like I get what makes teams work now.
Yeah, especially in those English-speaking environments.
Right, like you were saying.
What really stood out to me was how they said good teamwork isn't just like checking off a list.
Right.
It's about making people feel valued.
Heard and like they can contribute.
Yeah. You know, one thing that I'll never forget.
What's that?
Is that 5 whys method.
Oh, yeah.
I've been in so many meetings where something goes wrong and everyone starts blaming each other.
Right.
But this idea of like figuring out why it happened.
Yeah.
Instead of who to blame.
That's powerful.
It changes everything.
It really does.
It's like instead of being negative, you're actually solving the problem.
And then you can improve.
And that goes right along with focusing on solutions.
Right. It's not ignoring problems.
Right.
It's about being proactive and working together.
And this isn't just for work.
Oh, absolutely not.
Think about all the times you have to work in a team.
Right, like making decisions with your family or planning a vacation with friends.
Or a community project.
These principles work everywhere.
Oh, for sure. Can you imagine trying to plan a family trip?
Oh, my.
Without talking to each other?
It would be a disaster. Total chaos.
What I thought was really cool was how they tied language into teamwork.
Yeah.
Like if everyone understands the words and the ideas.
It makes communicating so much easier.
Especially when you have people from different cultures.
Right. And for you, working with English speakers, that shared language is crucial.
They made a good point about how people who don't speak English as their first language sometimes feel a little hesitant to speak up.
Oh, I can see that.
But their advice was so good.
What was it?
Just focus on communicating clearly.
Okay.
And don't be afraid to ask if you don't understand.
Like it's okay to need clarification.
And I loved how they said to see it as a chance to learn from your coworkers.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Like you can always improve.
As a team and individually.
And remember how they talked about acknowledging people's work?
Oh, yeah. It seems so simple.
But it makes a big difference.
Think about a time when someone really acknowledged you, how to make you feel.
Like someone notice.
Yeah, like they see you and they appreciate you.
And it makes you want to do even more.
Right. It's a positive cycle.
It is. And it doesn't have to be a big thing.
Right.
Just a quick thank you can go a long way.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what are the main things you think people should remember?
First, remember that you can get better at teamwork.
Okay.
The more you practice, the better you'll get.
So keep trying new things.
Second, make communication your top priority.
Right. Set clear expectations.
Delegate effectively.
And really listen to each other.
And finally, build that foundation of trust.
Okay.
Encourage people to be open. Recognize their contributions.
Yeah.
And when problems come up, focus on finding solutions.
This deep dive has been so eye-opening.
I know. I feel like I've learned so much.
I have a whole new understanding of teamwork.
The most important thing is to use this in your own life.
Yeah.
Whether you're leading a team at work, working on a project with other people.
Or just trying to get along in a group.
Yeah.
These ideas can help you make it a better experience for everyone.
So go out there and be the best team player you can be.
And if you hit a snag, remember what we talked about today?
It might just help you unlock your team's full potential.
Exactly.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.